Right. That's great.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. It is recording. It will be on the cloud. I'll send you a link.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Andrew. So I just want to kind of introduce Eric Williford here. So he's actually been working with me on some jobs, actually going with me to learn. Um, he wants to become a building biologist. He's already paid for all the courses. And I don't know if he's going to start with the building biology environmental consultant first or the EMRS, whatever comes first. But he's dedicated for this. And obviously I've edified you quite a bit and said you're really kind of the maverick when it comes to really cutting into the house and working on the core problem, which is the electrical problem. Unless we fix the electrical problem, we can't fix the rest of the entire house because it starts with that. So and then you got the grounding issue, you got the grid issues coupled with the house becoming an antenna. So the more we're looking at homes, the more we're realizing, like the house we ran last week, that so you have water pipe bonding issues, and we have the St. Louis issue with the code issues, and then we have that squirreliness going on. Then we have all these new smart meters now been attached to 1.5 million homes in the St. Louis area, and people are starting to get sick pretty quickly after those meters are being put in, and that's kind of the trigger with the wiring errors, ground to neutrals on the same bus bars, and then I think the smart meters is evacuating that issue because it's act like an antenna and it's energy throughout the whole house. So I really wanted you to talk to us today and give us a burn down version of what's it like to go into the box and why we should do that first, and then kind of give Eric a clear understanding of what he needs to do in the house. He understands miswires, he understands the electrical issues, hardwiring, um, bonds, and we should have one intercity median where they're all the different pieces come together. They're at the junction at the meter area. But how do you go into a box, use a fluke, and find the net current and ground the neutrals and neutral to neutrals or what have you? So I think that's kind of why I wanted you to kind of reach out to us today and talk to us about this. Plus, I want to talk a little more about maybe toward the end with the nuisance current blocker as well, which we have both of those here today.
It would be my pleasure. Eric, what an honor. Thank you so much for whatever it is that awoken you to get onto this boat. We really need electricians, so I'm delighted to hear that you're up and ready.
Yeah, I love it. I appreciate you being here and everything you've done. I'm in the middle of reading Killing Current right now, and also the Carl Riley book EMF Tracing, and that's helped me on a couple troubleshoot jobs. I had a job, customer's microwave wasn't working right. They had net current. You remove the bond wire from the water pipe, and it's sparking real bad. Anyway, took several hours. It would have been a lot quicker if I'd have had the meters that I have now at that time, but found out it was um, so there high resistance on the service neutral going back to the transformer. So the current's finding an alternate path to get back to it. And the utility company, Ameren, they're going out. They might have even went out yesterday, but they're going to go out and investigate. But it took several hours for me to find out that's where the problem was. And had I read your book a little sooner, had I had the meters a little sooner and understood how to use them, especially the clamp meter, uh, then it would have saved myself a whole lot of time. And like Rob was talking about with this fluke, he said there's a resistance test you can do. I guess you break the grounds and neutrals, at the panel, and you can do a resistance test to find out maybe where the net current's coming from. So I'd like to know more about that. But thanks for your time today.
Absolutely. Just to clarify, we will get into the continuity test and the neutral and neutral to ground continuity in the panel to uncover a lot of code violations that are putting current onto the grounding system from inside the house. But a continuity test is not to test current because it'll blow up your meter.
Sure.
You want the amp clamp, of course, with that, but it will test if inappropriate connections are being made or bonds
Right.
that are connected that would, allow the current to flow. As you know, current takes all paths.
Right.
So I want to separate the discussion right off the bat between foreign current and whatever you want to call local problems inside the panel. Now, the foreign current is the electrical grid, the power grid. And you've already said that you are coming across grid problems. Now that's an overlay into everything we're going to talk about today. Is the grid is a disaster. The multi-grounded neutral system itself puts magnetic fields into the entire property, puts ground current onto all the systems. So that's just, I have to move it aside for a second, but it's an elephant in the room that we're always going to come back to. What I wanted to focus on with you today is when you come into a house, I go over this in EMF tracing 102, and I'll probably pull it up on the screen just to define a few things. But your request is to learn how to use the fluke. So let's dive into that first to get technical and view the fluke itself, and just to get a couple of things, clarified really, really quickly, because I hate talking too much. I got to do something. And I'm sure you're probably the same way. Just let me look at something and let me push some buttons, right? All right. Can you see my fluke okay?
Yes, I can.
All right. So the power's on, and there's a little light here that you can, illuminate the screen. I don't think it is necessary right now. Now, on the horseshoe omega is your continuity test.
Right.
So let's go ahead and fire that sucker up, and then turn the dial to the, it's got this little audio feature as well, but the audio feature is not available when you first fire it up. You have to do something. So if you have your two leads here and you touch them together, you'll get a continuity between the two leads. And of course, the leads are set up with the black and the common. Mm-hmm. Black always goes in the common. And then the red here is at the omega over here for continuity, the ohms, diode, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So this is the way you'll set it for a voltage setting and also for the omega. But when we get over to the current, we got to move this over to here. So that's a separate topic. So just for the continuity testing, if you touch these leads together, you will get the ohms come up on the screen. Now there's no tone. Now it takes about 2 or 3 seconds for this thing to register once you touch these together. And that's a pain in the ass. But sometimes you need to know exactly what it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to push F3, and it'll give you the audio. Just push it once. And then as soon as you touch this, instantly you'll get a tone. That's your normal base that you're going to be using for all these tests, so you can go really fast. So in the panel, you're going to have basically 2 setups. Let's put this aside just for a second. Your panel is going to have a meter here, and then your main disconnect, and then your neutral bus and your ground bus, and everything is all tied together.
Right.
So in this case, which is, unfortunately the usual case, all you got to do, because these are bonded together, it's all one. Mm-hmm. So you can put an alligator clip on this black lead and just stick it there permanently.
Right.
So all you're going to do with your red lead is you're going to pull the neutral off and test the tip of this. Mm-hmm. And basically you're testing that neutral to all the other neutrals and all of the other grounding conductors.
Right.
Instantly.
Okay. Yep. It makes perfect sense. This is exactly what I did at the end. Just took me a minute to figure it out.
Right. I skipped a step. So what we want to do is, of course, the neutrals are, yeah. So coming into here, we have to remove, because we know that there's a neutral connection here and there's a bond here and all this kind of stuff. So the easiest thing to do for me is take off, use your lug set or whatever it is, remove the neutral from this. So you've isolated, just the house.
Right.
You're not testing the neutral and all the other kind of crap out here. It's neutral ground connection at the meter and all this other kind of crap. And if you really want to, there's only 3 wires coming in. There's a hot, 2 hots, and a neutral, right?
Right.
So if you remove that neutral, you should be able to isolate your internal.
Correct.
Now I'm just going to have to give a caveat. There's never 100% absolutes. You've also got a gas bond and probably a water bond coming in here. So it gets, how complicated this gets.
Mm-hmm.
And there may be freaking 5 amps of current coming in on this gas bond or excuse me, water bond. And you start testing things and your fluke or any other continuity tester may make a weird sound. And that's the current blowing up your meter.
Right. That I know exactly the sound you mean.
So then I would probably go, okay, something is wrong here. And I still got a bunch of something's creating a circuit through this. So you might want to go to that 4-gauge copper grounding conductor, that bond, and amp clamp over it. And hopefully you're wearing some gloves at this point, and you remove that sucker from the equation. So you're not blowing up your meter, for one. And for two, for a health reason, you don't want to be inadvertently touching stuff and all of a sudden create a path between you and your feet. I'm sure you're wearing electrical clothes, but there's a possibility your left and right hand could create, right across your chest, and you're going to have some problems.
Right. Right. I do have hot gloves. I haven't worn them to do this test yet, but I thought about it last night. In fact, I'm like, why the hell didn't I wear my gloves for that?
Well, you'll be surprised every once in a while you go, oh my God, this fricker's hot. What the hell? So as soon as you remove this neutral, it's an opportunity also to test between this neutral and, where's the ground rod?
Right.
Sometimes the meter's got one out there.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the damn water pipe is your electrode, right?
Right.
So it's an opportunity to connect the lead here and then whatever your electrode is. Now, at this point, the voltage setting, some people go, well, what's the voltage? Frankly, I don't care.
Right.
Because this is such a convoluted conversation. You sometimes can have 0 volts between these 2 points.
Sure.
Because they are somehow bonded together and they're touching each other somewhere. So there's no difference between them. And that's all a voltage test is what's the difference? And there's no difference. So it's 0 volts. And everybody goes, well, that's safe because no current will flow. It's 0 volts. And the opposite is absolutely true.
Right. Right.
So I don't even do a voltage test anymore. Some people want a neutral, an NEV, which is a neutral to earth voltage test. You got to take this red lead 100 feet away. Because this neutral could be bonded anywhere and it's energizing the earth all around this location.
Right.
So to actually get an accurate neutral voltage on this, you have to do what's called a remote ground reference. So let's just punt on this conversation. Okay. Because everybody's all about, well, what's my neutral voltage? I don't care.
Right.
I'm about current. Because current is what kills. And there's always going to be, 20 to 40 to 50 milliamps coming from the grid on that neutral into the home all the time, because that's the primary return current from the transformer. So you're always going to have current. If this comes into any other earth reference point, that completes a circuit to earth. So there will be neutral current coming in. So that's foreign current. So we're not going to deal with that. But I got to tell you, as soon as that neutral come loose, it's a great opportunity to start testing all these other things. But let's just punt on those for now, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So let's just talk about isolating this panel and getting these neutrals tested. So you put the black lead, just amp clamp it or whatever, just alligator clip, or just hold it firmly on there. Or if Rob's helping you out, just going real fast, you'll have your pliers on this thing and he comes along and just touches this real fast. But I also go like this. I go beep, just to make sure my meter hasn't clocked out.
Good practice, right?
I'll go beep. Okay, it's working. Now touch this. If it's nothing, you move on. You put that sucker back on and you re-terminate it. Don't let it stay out because you might miss something in the future.
Sure.
So you land it again. You pull the next neutral, touch it. Nothing. Put it back on. Next neutral. You just keep going. Now, let's say you find one. Beep. What the hell does that mean?
It means I got ground and neutral touching at some point on that circuit. And at least I've isolated. Well, it means I got ground and neutral touching at some point on any of those circuits still connect, like that neutral that I pulled apart has got continuity between a ground wire on any of the other circuits still connected to that bus bar.
Yes, it does. And also it means what? There's one other thing.
It also means that, well, let me think here. It would mean it could also be touching any of the other neutrals. You could
Very
have,
good. Ding, 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 ding.
yeah,
100%. So we have two things we have to explore here. Is it a neutral to neutral and or a neutral to ground? It can be both.
mm-hmm.
At this point, then you got to hunt down. You find where these wires enter in the panel, and you'll find the hot and the ground.
Right.
Then you trace that breaker back to what breaker it is. And I usually put a little piece of red tape on there, and I go, oh, that's the dryer. I know right off the bat that probably the damn bond right in the back of the dryer. So it's probably a neutral ground connection.
Right.
And then we find the grounding conductor, and I pull the grounding conductor off this bus bar, and I'll touch it directly from the neutral to the equipment grounding conductor of only that one circuit, and I'll confirm, is this a neutral ground connection in that one thing?
And I want to make sure I understand. You're talking about, like, say, a 3-prong dryer receptacle. You're talking about on the appliance itself, that grounding strap still connected between the neutral and the ground.
Correct. The most modern 4-wire dryers, electric dryers, come from the factory with the neutral bonded to the case still in the back.
Right. I see that on ranges too.
Exactly. That's my next thing I was going to go to. I'm glad that you're leading me, because that means you understand. So we have to remove those. And there's always these two pieces of equipment in every panel diagnostic that I suspect immediately: the dryer and the range, the neutral bond,
right,
between the neutral and the ground in the case. So I always just look for those immediately. So you pull the equipment grounding conductor, and you'll test 100%, boom, neutral to the grounding conductor of that dryer. Beep. It is a neutral ground. Now, with a dryer, there's almost 100% surety it's not a neutral to neutral, because they didn't do a junction box for the dryer and fed other receptacles.
Right.
But, with a dryer, I'll put the neutral back on, So range, the same thing. The 4-wire range, I'm going to test the grounding conductor, beep, and then we got to go remove that bond. So let's put this neutral back on. Let's go to the next neutral. Normal receptacle circuit, black, white, equipment ground. Beep. Okay, trace it up, find what receptacle it is. Okay, lighting in the living room. All right, so I'm going to pull the equipment grounding conductor for that circuit. I'm going to test it. Nothing. There's no continuity between the neutral and the ground. Okay, but I touch it back to the bus bar. Beep. It's touching another something in the house, because usually all the grounding conductors are all swimming together, all tied together throughout the house. So if there's any neutral ground connection between that and any other, it's going to beep. But so it's a neutral to neutral. And light switches are notorious for neutral to neutrals.
I just did a job where I came across, and I haven't seen it very often, but they were switching the neutrals. Have you seen that?
Tell me more.
So instead of switching, let me see if I can remember how it was configured. Normally you got you power your switch, and then you have your switch leg up to the light. In this case, they had power going directly to the light, but they had the neutrals back at the switch were the wires that were on the switch. They were making and breaking the neutral connection to turn the light on and off.
So yeah, that's not allowed by code. But also, right. I want to confirm, sometimes they'll run, and I'm not, I just got to say this, and I'm not calling you stupid, whatever it is. The black and the white wire will be used as travelers, basically. The black up to the
You're
light.
talking about a switch loop.
Right. So just as long as
Yeah.
we're talking about the same thing, it'll look like the white wire is going on to, you got your two nuts here on your switch, right?
Yep.
And the white wire will be terminated to one of these, and there'll be a black wire on the bottom.
Yeah, so power started at the light. They brought it down on the white and then sent the switch leg back up on the black.
Right. That's a
Yeah.
totally different thing.
Okay. Are you talking about a three-way in this case then?
No, this. Well, I don't want to get too complicated, but just as long as you understand, the color of the wires are meaningless because a lot of people don't wrap them with black tape and all that. But yeah, you cannot switch the neutral. That's a big bad no-no.
Oh yeah.
And if you found that, obviously, you shoot the guy who did that. And that's our job, is to show up and correct all these damn problems.
Yep.
All right, so we got a neutral to neutral. We found a neutral and neutral, and it's a light switch in the living room. And I'm immediately thinking, okay, there's another neutral that comes into that 2 or 3 gang switch in there. We got this breaker coming in here. So let's call it circuit number 12 coming into a 3 gang switch plate. Okay, fine. I'm going to put that neutral back on the bus. And I'm still hunting for another, there's got to be another one coming in here, another circuit. So we pull the next one off. Nothing. Put it back on. Pull the next one off. Beep. All right. And I look at the breaker, find where it comes in. Kitchen lights. All right. I pull the equipment grounding conductor off because this panel member, everything's swimming together. I don't know if it's neutral, ground. I pull the equipment grounding conductor off. Nothing. So I know it's not a neutral ground connection. But I touch it back to the bus bar. Beep. It's a neutral to something other neutral, right?
Yeah,
so I look at the circuit and I go, oh, it's circuit number 15. And through one step or another, you're going to figure out, well, the living room and the kitchen are right next to each other. And when I turn this breaker on, this breaker off, boom, it's right in this box. We got 2 circuits come together and they bundled all the neutrals.
Right.
So there's your neutral continuity. And you'll find this all the time.
I do. I see it all the time. I mean, you're not supposed to have more than one circuit in a junction box, like without the right divider in place.
Well, that's a Cadillac version of life, That's really nice. That's really sweet of you to say, But in reality, there's none of that crap. So
not in St. Louis anyway.
Yeah. So eventually, after let me keep going on so I don't lose the train of thought. So you put that guy on because you might find 5 or 6 of these.
Mm-hmm.
So I will wrap yellow tape around my parallel neutrals.
Okay.
So I'll put some yellow tape wrapped around this guy. And sometimes I'll write the circuit number, but it's up to you, whatever system you want. You can just put yellow tape and then come back. So if I know it's 15, I'll put, yellow tape and a little 15 on there. Re-terminate them. Now, when I'm all done, let's say I've only got 2 neutral wires, 12 and 15, and they're yellow. All right, so I'll pull those 2 off at the total end. We got 15 here, we got 12 there. I will test them together like this.
And you should have continuity.
Beep. And I'll test it back to the bus bar because remember I pulled these out and I'll have nothing. The neutral is not touching anything else, and that neutral is not touching anything else because remember I yanked these out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you immediately know where this 12 and 15 come together, and you can play, power on and off, whatever, and find in there, and then go in there and then unravel those 2, separate them out, and you come back to the panel, and there's no longer continuity, and you're done.
Mm-hmm.
So just so you understand the physics of this.
Yes.
The current coming in on 12, let's say there's 5 amps coming in here. We need 5 amps returning, and that will cancel the magnetic field around those. Now, if these neutrals are bundled, that 5 amps comes in here, it takes this pathway too. So 2.5 here, 2.5 here. That's 5, but only 2.5 returning here because it's going in 2 places. 2.5 plus 2.5 is 5. That's not enough current returning to cancel this. So there we have a big magnetic field.
So we got a net current
And to
there.
convolute this even more, you have the same phase coming in here. These two will couple. So this creates a magnetic field on its own, but also these two will resonate throughout the entire room. So you'll have a magnetic field. So if you stand in the middle of the room with your Gauss meter and you flip this light switch, any one of these on and off, you'll get a magnetic field about 5 feet away throughout the entire room because these wires are separate and doing a different way. And that's how, if you just want to walk through a house, in fact, you need to do this after you do your continuity test. This is a really important point. Some of these will not show up in this test. In fact, yesterday I proved this point. So what happens is you have a hot that comes out, comes into a bedroom. The wires will go around the room, hit a light, and it should go right back like this, right? Sometimes, if it has another pathway back to this one point, you've got a loop right here.
Right.
Current takes two pathways. But unfortunately, the hot and the neutral back to the panel will test fine because there's no other circuit coming in here. So we're testing this neutral to another circuit, and it will not beep because there's only one neutral in this whole thing. But this neutral breaks into two segments. I call this a neutral loop inside of a room, and you will have a magnetic field in here, but it won't test out in the continuity test.
I mean, so if I'm not mistaken, knob and tube wiring does the same thing.
Inherently by its nature.
Yeah.
It's got to go.
Right.
For any electric sensible. I mean, for anybody really, but.
Yeah, I mean, and the county inspector for St. Louis has said anytime you come across knob and tube, it's got to be remediated. But, and I still see it. I see it. People remediate it where they can see it, but then when it goes up into the wall or into the attic, nobody wants to get up there and deal with it. But yeah, I see the neutrals bouncing around and they don't follow the hot, and they'll make, like you said, just a big loop around the house.
Yep. So we want to have the hot and neutral run tight together in the same cable. In fact, this is now code violation. You have to have all the circuits of the conductor run in the same raceway.
Right.
And if you have magnetic field, that means these wires have become separate. And the distance is what's caused that magnetic field. And Rob can just be walking around. And if he's fine and all of a sudden he comes into a room where he turns something on, and in the middle of the room, the magnetic field shoots up, we got a wiring problem. Now, the other thing is you could have like a big old furnace or a pipe or something running through the floor of the room.
Sure.
Just around that, there's a localized magnetic field. That's a separate
issue. Eliminate those things.
We ran that last week.
Yep. Or the water pipe is carrying freaking 5 amps of current running right under wherever, and Yeah. So that's a separate issue. Now, before I lose the train of thought, if you have a second scenario where you actually are lucky enough to have a meter disconnect combo, you got your disconnect out here, then you have a 4-wire system coming to, technically a sub panel, but we can call it a main panel, whatever we want. And there could be another breaker here. It doesn't matter. The neutral and the grounded conductor bus bar, whatever you want to call it, and the neutral are isolated.
Right.
Now, this is a beautiful thing because your grounded conductor has its own wire testing all the equipment grounded conductors. And in neutral, which we'll pull off, is all the neutrals all by itself.
Right.
You can take your continuity tester as soon as you isolate this neutral back from its neutral ground bond here. This is where the neutrals and grounds are connected now. You take that off. You can take your meter immediately and test all of the grounded conductors and all of the neutrals in the panel immediately.
Right.
I love this.
Yeah.
And for a number of reasons, you can test all the neutral grounds. If you get nothing, then all you're doing is testing neutral for the rest of the day. No neutral ground connection. It saves you a lot of time. The other thing is you could take your amp clamp and stick it over this wire right here and see how much current is on your grounding system with the power on. Also, you can do other kinds of funky stuff, but let's just stay simple on this. I love to put my amp clamp on that equipment grounding conductor and then turn the breakers off one by one.
Ah.
And if this all of a sudden crashes down on one of them, that's a dead giveaway.
Right.
And this sorting out appliances that leak current to ground or a neutral ground bond or whatever it is, I don't care. It oftentimes you'll have two electrical panels fed from a service, and the equipment grounding conductors are bonded between these two electrical panels out in the house. So there's a loop between these two panels. And just because there's a loop, you're going to have circulation of current because the neutral comes from the service to here. The neutral comes to this point. So you could tell the neutral has, I'm sorry, I'm getting convoluted here. Let's go back to this first scenario. This main disconnect. So you have a 400 amp service and you have two individual 200 amp here.
Right.
Neutrals and grounds all bonded together. Neutrals and grounds all bonded together. No meter disconnect combo. So I'm going backwards here. Let's go back to this first scenario. You got your neutral that comes in here. You got your neutral that comes in here. These equipment grounding conductors are all wrapped together all throughout the house.
Right.
The neutral current comes in here. The neutrals and grounds are all bonded here. We'll actually find a path to this other panel and back here. So you will have current between these two panels, and then you have the water bond and all these other types of an AC furnace and coolant lines, everything that are merging these two. And just because of the nature that there is a circuit, there is current. So when you design a house, and if you have a very electrically sensitive person, this loop current, this is not a code violation, but it just exists. You will have current, and you will find current on the grounding system. In fact, I had a person with a sign tamer, a whole house sign tamer installed. It's basically a dirty electricity filter. Whenever the sign tamer turned on, the current on the grounding system went up to about 100 milliamps. After I removed these loops, the sign tamer no longer raised the current on the grounding system because it adds resistance, and the blocking up one path increases on others. So it's just all a convoluted thing. So that's why we got to do these panel diagnostics first before we install dirty electricity filters.
That's right. Gotcha.
Things will get worse.
That's good to know because I mean, I need to check my house for that. In fact, but I didn't think about that. Yeah. So if you increase the resistance, then your amperage is going to go up wherever that return current is, whatever path it's taken.
Yep. And as you know, inside of a cable, you got the hot and you got the neutral. If you have a capacitive filter plugged in, it's going to shunt the noise to the neutral and go back. So the high frequency noise now is on your neutral line. If your neutral is bonded to another circuit like we had in this light plate and is creating a magnetic field, guess what? All of that noise and all that dirty electricity is now in that magnetic field. Things have just got worse. Plus you added a load and are creating more of a magnetic field.
Right.
So before you add any filters, having this neutral continuity test is really important.
I'm going to do that today at my house. I didn't even think of that. I appreciate you bringing that up because it makes sense. I'm tracking exactly what you're saying, but I didn't get that far in my head yet.
That's quite all right. You will find all this stuff out in time. I'm just trying to help you out.
Yeah, this is fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating.
So, Andrew, real quick, not to interrupt here. We have a client, and she's electrically sensitive, and she's got a really bad scenario where the drop and the meter is attached to her bedroom wall, and she's sleeping right next to it. And you know, we had the plumbers going out today to put a dielectric union and a PEX tubing in at the water pipe, so we really find out what exactly we can where we're at without having that come in. So that's going to be done today. But my question would be, when you feel that on a situation that with electric sensitive person, you almost have to do a meter disconnect combo to make things work, or would you think you have to get that panel off a wall and just move it someplace?
Well, that's a complete deal breaker. If you have a bedroom
Yeah,
next to your,
that's the problem.
you, I don't care. She's got to move it. She's got to get her bed away from this because there's very little we can do to stop the magnetic field. We can reduce it a little bit,
Right.
by reconfiguring wiring and stuff. But unless you either move this or you move this, it's an untenable situation. And for electric sensitive people, I say 10 feet.
Okay, so we're going to need to move that over because we can move it on that same wall. I know it's going to be an expensive situation to do that, but even I said even if it's attached to or closer to her kitchen, there is a lot better than on her bedroom because she sleeps there all night and she's really suffering really bad. I mean, she's very desperate. She started crying when we were at her house last week because she says, I know I have an electrical problem. I can feel it. And she was right. She had an electrical problem and she had jumpers and she had current on the water pipe and we had 5 milligauss to 10 milligauss of magnetic field right where she's sleeping. And it fluctuates as the grid changed. It was constantly moving back and forth, and that's where she's sleeping. And she had smart meter just put in.
So the water pipe, you guys ready to talk about it?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Because this is a pretty nasty situation. So where the water pipe enters the home, so here's our ground level.
Mm-hmm.
It comes
it's
through
on the other side of the house, but yeah, that's the back of the house where bedroom's at, and the water pipe comes in through the front, but then runs back to the by underneath their bed.
Right. Everywhere the pipe runs, you're gonna have a magnetic field because of the thing. So a real crash course in this, and good luck trying to figure out the water pipe solution in St. Louis. Good luck with that. So my strategy is we cannot have this acting as an electrode. It cannot be an electrode. An electrode, we want those ground rods to act as the electrode, not the water pipe. Mm-hmm. So we're going to transfer the definition of, the required electrode, 250.24 or whatever, to be your ground rods and not your water pipe. So now if we cut this where it enters the home, so it cannot, well, it's really hard to do this where you can't even bond it. Good luck with that. But see if you can cut it before you can even have anybody say, oh, that's a water pipe, you need to bond it. It's not an electrode anymore, but if it's just a freestanding piece of water pipe, you're required to bond it, right? So we're going to get to that. So if you cut it here and install dielectric or PVC, PEX, whatever it is, then it goes metal again. Now this becomes a bond, not a grounding electrode.
Right.
So this still goes back to your service. So now the neutral current is still hitting this pipe. And neutral current is going to find any and all pathways back to its source. And if this water pipe comes into any appliance, water heater, whatever, equipment grounding conductor, back to the panel, God only knows, but it could find another pathway to earth some way through another appliance or concrete or whatever. There will be current on this and neutral current will use it. So what I want to do is I want to use the code to our benefit. Is there a way that we can just use the bond from this water heater as the bond for the water pipe? So I am not required to neutral bond this thing, but my equipment grounding conductor is the bond. And yes, the code does allow this. And I can show you the code, but my goal is to get the neutral off of that water pipe.
Yeah, 100%. Even though you put it on the non-road side, even so, it still has a possibility to find another route because maybe
Yes.
you block the current from coming in from the road, but even though you bonded on the other side so it doesn't come in from the road, you still, because that neutral bond is on that metal, another location that's bonded that can create another loop.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, it's going to be energized anyway because the neutral is carrying a load and it's trying, the electrons are pushing on this. So how you test the voltage could be very misleading because everything's bonded together. You'll see 0 volts on this, but actually you amp clamp around this and you'll find, holy shit, there's a bunch of current on this.
So even though there's a PEX tubing there, we still find current on there because this you got pressure from the grid pushing into that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even if you turn the power completely off here, that neutral is still tied to the primary side of the
Oh,
transformer
that's right. I forgot about that.
and it's bonded through to the secondary side. So it's pushing in here. It's going to push on all pathways trying to move. So we've got to
And
get this.
the transformer also, because it has a jumper to the primary side too, is really connected to the whole world still.
That's correct. And it's
Okay.
grounded. So this is a separate conversation, but we got to remove the primary source coming to your house. And what we can control is this point. So I can pull up the code if you want to have it now. Otherwise, it's in my NEC highlights. I can pull that up for you. It's also in my water pipe solution book. I walk you through all these steps and I provide you the code that you can, hopefully the inspector and you can give him a 6-pack of beer or something and get him to give you this is not the way we do it in St. Louis. Well, would you allow it for this electrically sensitive person? It's allowed by the National Electrical Code. Would you allow an exception or a variance or whatever you want to call it?
In most inspectors, in my experience, I mean, I know a lot of them, and they're pretty reasonable. As long as you're, not trying to be an asshole about it, they're they're pretty reasonable people. So in some cases, what we can do is, let's say we have a finished basement and we can't even get to where the water pipe comes in the house, and we can't bond to it. They'll let us add a second ground rod 8 foot away or 10. I think it's 8 foot away from the first one, and they'll let us use that as the supplemental electrode. Now that doesn't solve the issue of having to bond anything, the metal water pipe or the gas line or anything like that. But I have gotten away with 2 ground rods several times.
So let's clarify the terminology.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Holt has a great video on 647 dot, oh man, 649.47. I can't remember what the auxiliary ground code is. God, sorry, blanking out right now. But the nemesis of our systems is to have 2 earth reference points. Now, there's a very, very big difference between doing this. That's 2 ground rods, but there's 1 grounding electrode conductor. That is not what I'm talking about.
Okay, that's what I was referring to.
That is fine. This is a problem.
That's an antenna, right?
You have lightning arrays, roof bonds, cable bonds. If you have 2, this is your earth plane. Well, actually, this is your earth plane. Whatever.
Sure.
Current, lightning strikes here. The wave is coming this way. Hits up here. Now it's moving this way. It's still traveling. And then there's a voltage difference between this point and this point at this point, and then current rushes through the home to this point. We don't want this. We want everything bonded in one point. If we don't have this, this rushes in. This is basically 1 point coming in versus current swimming through the entire house to this other reference point.
Right.
So in general, we want to get rid of any auxiliary grounding. And this includes generators and now I'm reluctant to say this, but second buildings, outbuildings, you will have this phenomenon where you have these 2 ground rods that are way far away. And as long as that second building is to the equipment grounding conductor, that's better than at least a neutral, inappropriate neutral connection. But we will still have current in the earth 24/7 because there's two earth reference points. So with the water pipe, clarify again. So if the code says if you have this water pipe, if you didn't, explain it again, what the auxiliary ground would be. Would it be this connecting to it, or just adding another ground rod here?
It's just adding another ground rod, and the grounding electrode conductor has to be a continuous. It terminates in the meter base. It comes out the meter base and hits the first ground rod, and then goes on to the second ground rod.
Yeah, that's not a problem. I'm okay with that. In fact, pretty much I think the code says if you have more than 25 ohms of resistance on the first one, drive the second one and walk away. You don't even have to measure. As long as you have two ground rods, that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
Now for the water pipe, I don't want the water pipe bonded to the electrical system, period.
Right.
Because the EPRI information says literally from their research, all of the blame for leukemia from the power lines can be placed upon the water pipe connecting with bathing areas.
Wow.
Because your skin has resistance when it's dry. When you are wet, it basically goes to zero. So you're no longer blocking any ability to current. And so when you have your body, you have two layers of protection. Well, you have one layer of protection. That's your skin. And then you have internal, about somewhere between 200 and 300 ohms across your body, inside your body, the fluids, tissues, and everything. Your skin can be, a freaking mega ohm, it can be a heck of a lot, especially with electricians with tough hands.
Right.
It's considered 1,000 ohms for all measurements. If you take your fluke out and you want to test current, how much current is possible if a person touches a system and creates a path, you use 1,000 ohms as your number to measure the resistance of the skin and also the internal across here. So that means the skin is going to be somewhere between 500 and 700. And if it's wet, it's zero. You're only left with the internal, 200 to 300 ohms.
Gotcha.
So that's IEEE numbers, 1,000 ohms. So all the calculations I do, if you want to test your lead with the drain or the faucet with one hand, and then the other hand, how would that current flow through the person? However you want to set your meter up, red lead, black lead, to see how much current would go through the body. And you put that on your milliamp setting first. You move the red lead over to this point, and test milliamp. And if you get nothing, great. There's 2 ohms of resistance on the milliamp setting provided by the meter.
Okay.
You turn it to microamp, it becomes 100 ohms of resistance. Now, in my presentations, I go into the math on this, but basically here's the punchline. 2 microamps exceeds the NIEHS threshold that EPRI figured out would be cancer-causing and leukemia-causing environment for children. 1 millivolt per meter was the number provided by the NIEHS. If you have this voltage gradient internal in the body, 1 millivolt per meter, if that gradient is internal in the body, it messes up the bone marrow, it messes up the children's, all kinds of systems, and that would be leukemia and cancer causing. So what's the translation between 1 millivolt into current? Because we have to actually measure the current, because the voltage is so misleading when it's so hard to get an accurate reading. Plus, internal in the body, how in the hell are you going to measure that? Well, EPRI figured out that 2 microamps I'll walk you through the math later if you want. If you have this guy set on your microamp setting, if you're getting 2 microamps, anything above that or 2 microamps would exceed this.
Gotcha.
Now, if you that's using the meter. If you are testing the body, okay, you didn't have the body. You just stuck the meter in place of the person. You just have the meter leads here and meter lead. You're not touching the person at all.
Mm-hmm.
If you involve the person, if you like took the black lead here and the red lead here, and you plug the person into, and you're using 1,000 ohms of resistance of the body, then you have to move this decimal point. And we're now over between 0.08 microamps and even less, according to the math that EPRI had. It comes ridiculously low.
Wow.
It's insanely low if you actually plug the person's resistance into this equation. So I just stay simple. I use the meter only. I just plug the meter in here between these 2 points, and I look for 2 microamps. And if I got 2 microamps flowing through between here, that I know if I plug a person into here, then I know I'm going to have a cancer, leukemia cancer. We're talking about ridiculously low numbers. And especially this is an insanely stupid number. So that the whole endpoint is, if a circuit exists at all, this amount of current has every potential to be able to flow. So we cannot have a circuit, period. You cannot allow there to be a circuit with the electrical system to the wet areas of your home, period.
Right.
Any amount of current, any measurable amount of current, because of the properties of how current flows between 2 contact points, and I go through this in my presentation. If you understand how, I know you understand how the capacitor works. You have 2 plates, and the energy jumping between these 2 plates is what we're talking about. You have 2 contact points. So there's a medium inside this, and this is our body. That energy translates and connects through that resistance to this other plate, and we have a capacitive inductance, whatever, to these 2 points. There's the problem. But if you only have 1 plate, very, very little current will go through the whole body unless you have a secondary contact point. So this is the problem with making 2 places of contact. The body is touching the drain or the faucet, and you connect and you make a circuit. There's our problem. If you don't have a circuit, if you cut out the second contact point by, cutting the water pipe or whatever it is, you don't have a circuit, then you won't have that current flow. So just as long as you understand, we have to break the circuit.
Right. And when your meter, when you said you're looking for 2 microamps, you're talking about between either a tub or a sink and the water pipe.
Correct. Any 2 contact points that person will likely to make. Now, I love to show people, okay, in your sink, in the woman's working at the faucet here, and then she reaches over and touches either the oven, stove, or whatever it is. There's the body right there touching 2 points that are grounded. You got this going back to your panel, this going back to your panel. There's a circuit right through the body. There's 2 contact points. So I'll set the meter up to touch the sink and then the other thing, and only use the meter itself and look for 2 microamps. If the person holds one of these leads, then it becomes ridiculous.
Right.
Point, any measurable current at all. So with a bathtub, you've got the drain down there, and you have a metal drain going to earth. So that's 1 contact point. You got your water in there. And what's the other person, the likely person? You got a faucet. If that person is connected to the water pipe, there's definitely a circuit going to be here. The water pipe is bonded, earth, boom, you got a circuit. So set up the scenario with your meter, how 2 people, a person would touch to an object. And the faucet to drain is always an easy one to hit.
Yeah, I'm going to do that at my house today.
No, Andrew, so even though our piping here is plastic, PVC, Does that still apply?
If that circuit is broken, you will not have any current between them. Now, you'll get
Newer construction,
Newer
yes.
construction, I mean, after like
correct.
1985 or 90 or whatever it is, they started going all PVC.
Right. You
I
shouldn't have
didn't
that
know.
problem.
Okay, all right.
All right. Questions?
No, this was fascinating. Thank you. This was super informative. This I got well. Actually, I'm sorry. I do have a question. So you had mentioned a couple other things that I guess maybe they're books. EMF tracing 102 and NEC highlights, and then you said you had a book on water pipe.
Yes.
Can I find those on your website? I'm surprised I haven't seen them yet already.
It's quite all right. There's just too much information in this business.
It's like drinking from a fire hose, and I kind of hit the ground running because I'm familiar with a lot of the terms, and I've been doing this for 25 years.
Yeah, you will
So,
absorb it quickly, but it's the neural pathways have to have time to adjust.
right.
So if you go to my website, Home Med Tracing, go to the shop page. The Killing Current series has basically the most relevant books that what you're talking about here.
Okay. Perfect.
So this is my latest book, The Contact Current Body Voltage. This goes into the NIEHS and EPRI information if you want to really put your face into and really absorb the immense, it's a mind-blowing experience of what we're talking about here with the body and how little current is. If you plug your body into a circuit, how little current does a massive amount of damage. And I equate it to ionizing radiation. I believe current is the definition of ionizing because
Okay.
the definition of current is the movement of charged particles.
Right.
What is the definition of ionization? Electrons being ripped off of your atom, right? That's the movement of a charged particle. The electron is a charged particle. Movement of
Right.
charged particles, that's
They're
current.
charged and they're moving.
That's right. So the water pipe solution here, this gives you the code. EMF tracing here gives you the protocol for doing the diagnostics. And you want to dig more into the parallel paths, understanding all that kind of crap that's here. The meter disconnect installation notes is here for all the details that I recommend for that. But this will give you a crash course on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, this is great. This is great. I can't wait to dig into those.
Andrew, real quick, you just was on another show. I guess I call it a show. I paid for that last little, if you recall it. They sent you can apply. I paid for a little time to watch the new.
Is that the Healthier Tech Summit?
Yeah, what's it called again?
Healthier Tech Summit. That's going to be
Yeah.
existing. That's on September 18th through 21. And my presentation's on Thursday, the 21st.
Okay.
And that's there's going to be Sam Milham, Dave Stetzer, Dr. Paul Heroux, mind-blowing stuff.
Was that $45? What it was? Or I paid for something. Was that something I already paid?
I have no idea how much it charged, what they are. You can watch the video, my first video, for free. There's no price for that. But I don't know what the pricings are.
I was trying to find a website for that because I think I paid for it. I don't know if it's two separate things or the same thing we're talking about, but if you can send me a link or whatever it is, I like to see if that's what I paid for.
Healthier Tech.
The Healthier Tech Summit.
Yeah, because you were going to talk about the grid issues in your presentation is what I saw.
Yes, I'm focusing on the grid problem.
Yeah, so that's what I paid for. So, but I thought the show had already played.
No, it'll start on the 18th, but there's many other topics other than mine, but I focus on the power grid problems. So
I like power grid problems because that's a foundation of everything.
In my opinion, yeah, day one is, they got 4 days of stuff and they're talking about all kinds of stuff, dirty electricity, cell phones. They got really great people too. Where is Dr. Sharon Goldberg goes into the diseases that are created by electromagnetic frequencies. It's just fascinating stuff. MRSA, Epstein-Barr, all these other diseases that flare up around electromagnetic fields, and of course, Wi-Fi radiation, all that kind of stuff. Here's my day, the day 4. Dr. Paul Rose is a freaking genius, bridging the medical with the electric. And so it's fascinating guy. He has also talks with Dr. Mercola you can find. Of course, Dr. Sam Millam, Stetzer, Havas, and myself doing day 4. And this guy's I think the sign tamer guy. Oh, the Power Perfect dirty electricity guy.
Yeah, that's an exciting show. I like all of. Yeah, there was like I like Sam Milham. I can't believe the guy's still around.
Is it just a Zoom?
This is a webinar, 4-day webinar where you sign up, and then you see a bunch of free shit. Mm-hmm. And if you want to go deeper, then you pay something. That's as far as
I did that. That's what I went and paid for it. But they give a bunch of free stuff, downloads. It's pretty informative. But I like I can't look on my computer that long because it bothers me. So I always like to wait for the real stuff to come out because all the download I'm constantly on my computer. I don't usually get into that deep with that. But
just so you know, my presentation is broken into 3 parts because I just too much. So my first part is free as part of the summit, and then if anybody wants to go further, then I have links that you can go to purchase the 2nd and 3rd hours of the videos to go deeper. So mine is a little bit different than most of the others in that you'll have to then go to my website to continue learning on my stuff.
So is there a specific link to log into that? I guess I did it and can't get back to that link to log in.
For you, after your purchase, they should have sent you something.
They did.
How you'll log in. If you send me that email, I could probably help you figure out. Or let me give you the email of the coordinator where you have any questions. Her name's Shabade. She's a fantastic person. She can help you directly with technical issues, how to access stuff and all that kind of stuff. I'm not the expert on that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and send you an email right now.
Grid problems. That is fascinating, especially here in this town.
So Rob Workman and Healthier Tech Summit. If I could just spell. Gosh. All right. So Shabade is the coordinator. So if you have problems accessing your information, there's your person.
Okay.
She is lovely. And it's Shabade at healthiertech.co. What else?
I think that's it for now. I know we had
that covered all my questions.
I think maybe what we'll do is another time I'll pay for this next go around, and we might focus on the news and current blocker and do a long, strong video and record that as well.
Yeah, maybe in a couple of weeks we can do another one.
Yeah, once you find current and you've done all you can to remove the code violations, what are you left with? And if you've used the code as much as you possibly can to remove the current, and then you still got current, that's when the NCB comes in.
Yeah, especially for my customers who want the ground, and obviously, then you have I know you've done some classes on it in the past, but we'll do a separate one in a couple of weeks. We'll do it again on a Friday morning again.
Right. So if the electric fields are the problem, why people want to ground is you have an electric field problem from Romex wires. We have to get rid of the Romex wires. You either switch them off with the double pole switches or whatever it is, or you change them to MC cable to get rid of the electric field. Whatever electric fields are remaining, or for whatever reason, if a person wants to use a grounding mat or shielding paint or whatever it is, you're going to have current if the person connects their body to the electrical grid and they complete a circuit. The current is the killer. So the NCB has the dial in it to where you block enough current, but you reduce the electric field enough as well. So that's the whole important point, is the dial. We have to find the sweet spot. And if you don't use the meters to find the sweet spot, and I'll walk you through this, turn the dial all the way to the left. It's the lowest resistance, allows the electric field to be bled away as much as possible. If you don't do any measurements, turn the dial all the way left and walk away. Usually the clients feel better immediately because the electric field is reduced and there's 14 ohms of resistance. That's enough current blocked. They're not going to be damaged.
Okay. Yeah, because we unscrew this and the dial's inside, and you turn it. Right. That's how we do it.
The latest one has an access point through the face. You can just stick a screwdriver in there without taking the cover off.
Okay. So to kind of recap one last time with our client that we have, highly EMF sensitive. Obviously, like every client, we might move in a few years. We don't know for sure. So, but it's a nice house. What your recommendation if the bedroom's not that big, so there's no way she's gonna get 10 feet away from that panel. So my suggestion was to move the panel on the same side of the house, just brick on the back of the house there, but move it over. But then again, it's a drop too, so she'll have it going across her yard a little bit more in the center of the yard. Right now, it's on the corner of the yard, going back to the transformer in the back corner of the yard. So what was your suggestion to be on that, besides meter disconnect combo and so forth?
Well, as Eric knows, it's all about money. You know, how much it is to move a service is just a ridiculous amount of money. And you approach her with that amount of money. And what are my other options for getting my bed away from this meter? Maybe she'll reconsider and sleep somewhere else in the house. At least move it across the room. I don't care what is across the room. You move the damn thing and get that bed away. So reality may set into her situation.
But if money wasn't a problem, I have 10,000 hours I'll put aside to do this to make me feel better. I don't want to move. Then moving the meter could be a problem. Could be an option if that was.
Yeah, I had a person in Charlotte, gigantic house. She had like 6 different cabinets at the head of her bed, solar, generator, service, meter, everything. And I wanted to move her bed to the other side of the room. She says, no, it's not going to really work cosmetically. $25,000 later.
Yeah.
Moving all that stuff off the house. So yeah, you got some people that have the money. That's rare. So yeah, you price it out. And if you're going to do a service drop, and if you're not getting a big old magnetic field from a service drop, you can move the masthead, you can move the whole thing, and it's not that big of a deal. Great, go for it.
Okay. So obviously it's so drop. I mean, the other one option too is to go underground as well, but move it over. But also, once you're going to move it over, might as well possibly go underground. Would that be?
It's another gigantic lump of money, and if they're going to be burying the lines, and Eric will tell you what it's going to take. Remember, we also have all of the wires that come from the meter or from the cabinet into the home we have to deal with. And there's really no moving those unless it's just the meter. And then we have the service entrance feed or whatever. It's just a cable, one bundle. That's fairly reasonable. You can change that one bundle of wire out. But if you got 15 or 20 circuits coming into one place and terminating in one place, then you have to deal with all of those around the bedroom too. I mean, it becomes a nightmare.
Yeah.
This is where Eric is so valuable, because his experiences will give you the reality.
Yeah. He was already trying to give me the reality, and I was there. I was like, let's just move the meter off the house, move it over here. And he's like, oh my God, I'm looking at 10 grand here. We're really thinking quite a bit. But I talked to her outside, when he wasn't there, and she was, listen, I'm freaking out here. I'm just crying, and I need to get something done. I said, well,
and it's affecting her kids too.
So, she had a Wi-Fi router right there by her bed, for the baby monitor, putting out 3.2 million microwatts of radiation, 5 feet from her kid, 4 feet from her kid. So she understands this. She's injured from it. And usually, like the couple that we met in Nashville, when she had her third baby, I think that's what triggered this EMF sensitivities, the stress they're going through late in childbearing. So
from a business model perspective, you have to say up front what you think is the biggest elephant in the room, because sometimes that's the only chance you'll get before everything crashes. So if the Wi-Fi router is there, you have to move that first.
Right.
I'm not moving your service until that Wi-Fi router is gone.
Amen.
Because if I move that service and they still feel like shit,
Yeah, they're going to blame you for it
Right.
and be pretty
it's
upset.
exactly. And the second biggest thing is the electric fields, in my opinion, around the bedroom. So if we don't have a solution for killing the electric fields at night, throwing the breakers off, disconnect switches, whatever it is, that's going to be more damaging to their health, and they'll feel it more than the magnetic field 8 or 9 feet away. So if you can win those two arguments and have them sleeping without the electric field around the room and the Wi-Fi router is gone, they'll immediately start feeling better while you do your other work. But if you do it in the opposite and they still feel like shit and they come back and go, we spent $10,000 and you did this and we still feel like shit, and the Wi-Fi router's still going because she's afraid to talk to her husband.
Yeah, that's what the scenario was. She's like, because it's easier for them to spend the 10,000 and move something is to turn that Wi-Fi off.
And he's already agreed to. I talked to him like after you left. I talked to him for about another 45 minutes, and then I talked to him the next day when I went back to take another measurement. He's ready to hardwire like immediately. He's like, just throw me a bid, throw me a quote for just the hardwiring, and we'll start with that, and then we'll deal with the rest later. So I'm sure that's part of your mitigation plan.
That's exactly
fine. So he's on board. So that's great because he was more skeptical at first. And I'm seeing that with other people, even though they have a spouse that's sick. A lot of times it's the other spouse you got to convince. And just like, Megan or whatever her name was with the big house, her husband with all the Mary.
Oh, Mary. Yeah, Mary.
And if they're going to move the service, make sure they have a meter disconnect combo.
Okay, so that's pretty much a must because you're taking it apart anyway, right? Because you're moving it over, and
if you're going to spend that much money, now's the time to get a meter disconnect combo.
Right.
So obviously, getting out of the room, not sleeping there, and then hardwiring everything would be the least expensive way for her to take care of this situation. Move the bed over at least 10 feet away, or she sleeps 10 feet away from it, or sleep in another room, and hardwiring would be the mitigation plan that makes the most amount of sense financially.
Yep.
Then the next step is okay, well, did we have any wires underneath her bed that were
well, yeah, all the home, so the meter comes in right outside her bedroom window, but the panel is right under her bed, so all the home runs come right into the panel right there. Like, you need to move it all.
Yeah, well, it looked like someone come in and run along the sill plate on the side. I didn't know if they run right underneath her bed, but it doesn't matter. She's still right there. She's gonna get that 6 to 9 feet of electrical field.
Right.
I mean, it's a disaster.
She's right in the middle of all of it.
And they just put the smart meter in, so she's feeling it too now.
Yeah, the smart meter is going to make everything worse, but the everything part is more important, in my opinion. You can block the smart meter radiation easily with some aluminum foil.
Right.
But the dirty electricity that's going to be in the wires, but we have to remove the fields from the wires. So the fields from the wires under her bed, the electric fields from those have to be the focus. So how do we get rid of the electric fields that is broadcasting the energy into her body? Magnetic fields, electric fields. Electric fields are just any wire that's going to be on. Magnetic fields is uncanceled or, net current, whatever you want to call it, water pipes that's under there. We got to deal with all these things individually. But if their bed is over all the main service wires or whatever, I mean, you got to move the bed because the amount of money we're going to have to spend to move all of those wires and either change them to MC cable or reroute them, it's extraordinary. Now, if they're willing to do that, great.
Yeah, because the other concern I have is when you start turning breakers off too at night, then you have to deal with the kids, with their breakers possibly being off too as well. So that's the hardest thing I have in my mind to convince clients is turn those breakers off because of other family members that we engage in and causing some heartache with their, especially young kids. You actually want to turn off the breakers, the light in that room.
So I go into the double pole outlet switches. So if you have, your meter here comes into room 1, room 2, room 3. So if you got a room here that you want to turn off, you just put a double pole outlet switch here, and then you can have control of this room. If you have a double pole outlet switch here that feeds in here, both these rooms are dead, but this one's still alive.
Right.
So there's ways that you can install these little
Um,
switches but you got to first figure out what the circuit is.
Yeah, you got to map out the circuit first.
yeah,
Now
because
we can get creative. We could pull a brand new line and then cut the power off, but give this person power down here. You just put a double pole right here. Boom, we killed the power to everything, but we brought a nice clean MC cable in here to give them power whenever they want that has no electric field.
okay, because she's just as concerned about her kids too. So you
As she
know,
should.
and especially with that smart meter, if you have power on in there, that broadcast to those wires. And obviously, most people don't want to tear the walls out and put MC cable around the walls of the room. So that's why the double pole makes sense.
Yes, you cut the hot and the neutral, which is allowed by code. It's 404.2. As long as the neutral is cut at the same time as the hot, you're fine. Of course, always look for the outliers. If it's a multi-wire circuit, all this kind of bullshit, but be smart. You can cut the individual areas with a double pole outlet switch, and then you always have to consider the grounding conductor that's remaining. If you have current on your grounding system, it will create its own fields. And only in extreme situations with extremely sensitive people, and I spend the time, I will install a triple pole that cuts the equipment grounding conductor at the same time. It's a 3-pole motor switch. But I'm not broadcasting that because it's such a taboo conversation. If you're breaking the equipment grounding conductor.
Right.
So it's got to be like at the end of a circuit, and this is a little contained area, and that equipment grounding conductor is, for whatever reason, making it worse.
So do you ever do? I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you do the kill switches that often? Then, since you can do the double pole switch.
With really, really big houses, and the client has lots of money, $1,500 to buy the 8 circuits turned off at night, and the 4 hours for the installation, and also you have to do the NFA bed maps to really confirm, do you have the right combination
Right.
of breakers being turned off? Because as you know, we're dealing with a balance in the panel, and one breaker off means more current on the other phase, which
Effect. Yeah.
you have to write the right combination. So if they're going to be a nighttime setting, you literally have to say it's only these 8 breakers. You make it 7, the whole thing goes like this. So before you install, whatever you want to call them, the kill switches or the
sleep safe.
Thank you, sleep safe system. The bed map has to be done in one bedroom, the other bedroom, and the other bedroom with all 8 off, and make sure they all are the optimal.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many times we did one bedroom, but it messed up the other bedroom.
Yeah. Yep. We just practiced quite a bit last week on the bed mapping, and went through it and through it and through it, and we practiced and did it. We recorded magnetic electrical fields. We did 9-point bed maps, and even a 6-point bed map. We just really got into that because that's gonna be part of our presentation now in every house. Like that got kind of out of it, but it's way powerful, especially for the spouse that doesn't really understand what's going on here, and you can see it right there. That's then they start coming around a lot stronger versus just talking about it.
Within the first 15 minutes of me putting foot in their home, I'm showing them that on their computer or on my computer. It is the most impressive thing that I can get a person onto. Oh my God. Power on, power off. Holy smokes. 15 volts per meter, 0.3 volts per meter.
Now, you mean power off? Did you turn all the power off in the house and did it just real
Yeah,
quick?
within 15 minutes. I walk in the house, bed map,
Yeah.
boom, 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 boom. Electric field, magnetic field, 3D.
And when you turn power off, I mean, obviously I would like to turn the main breaker off, but would it be safer to do individual breakers
If you
versus?
got time, yes, that's always nice to do. And as Eric can tell you, it's better to have them. You don't want to slam everything at once, but whatever. Get that power turned off. Do another bed map, electric field, magnetic field. Pull it up on your computer, and you got to practice, because pulling these charts up and getting them lined on your screen, sometimes I'll crash the whole damn thing. I got to start over again. So it takes practice. But if you can line that up, here's the before, here's the after, they go, oh.
I got 2 NFAs now. I got 2 NFAs right now, and he's got one as well. So we're pretty much going to be doing most of these calls together. At least appointments that I get, I'm gonna have him go with me on every call. It's part of my agreement with all my clients now, because he can do the deep dive in the EMFs, get close to the routers and things like that. And me, a guy destroys me for a week. So because I was working in a team, plus we were doing a survey and we had a water pipe issue, like you said. But I thought initially, could it be this? Could it be the switch? And as I brought it out, it wasn't dropping off that much. But I said, well, it's still dropping off. And then I brought the NFA down. And then it could then obviously make it feel went to 4 or 5 milligauss, and we realized, okay, it's probably a water pipe. But you got to take the switch out while we're videotaping it, looked at it, make sure the switch is right, run it through the fan or light, and it was really kind of fun working together like that.
Good job, guys. This is what we need.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Andrew. I know you're super busy, but I'll probably reach out to you in the next couple of weeks and we'll do this again.
Go for it, guys. This is great. I'm so glad, Rob, you found Eric. Eric, blessings to you. Don't burn out, brother.
Sounds like you know me already.
So when are you going to be able to travel again? Are you still doing, so you kind of stuck there for another year, or how much longer you have to do this?
Yeah, I probably got at least, I'm 8 months in right now, and I probably got another 6 months before I get my contractor's license.
Awesome. Yeah. So you're gonna take the deep dive with the BBI as well. They're going to use you as a edification of how this should be done, because you got your license, correct?
Well, that's up to them.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think you remind me of Rob Metzer a little bit too. You get the same look.
I'll give that as a compliment.
Yeah, you do.
All right, guys. It's a pleasure.
Thanks, all right. Send me the link.
All right. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.